Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to the first Spring 2023 update from GavsWeatherVids. So here we go again, it's time to bring you another season of the long-range seasonal updates from GavsWeatherVids. We left off with the winter updates and forecasts at the beginning of December. We had a little break over December while I went to New York, and then over Christmas and New Year we are now back with another couple of months worth of long-range updates. So we're going to be looking at spring 2022, and I shall get on with the first spring update for you in a moment. Just to say that the first video today was our 6 AM upload, and we have a 10 to 14 day with all operating features coming up to you later on this afternoon. Please like, share, and subscribe on all other videos. Thank you so very much, everybody, for doing that. Thank you so much to Richard, your friend Richard Trott, for the gift. More about that in a second. Thank you so much, Richard, for our lovely spring updates gift. And thank you so much to Shryan as well, Shryan Brim, for the help on this update, getting together the years. We're looking at December data for this one, and Shryan has got all the years together for us, for me to create the analog. So thank you so much, Shryan, for that. Thank you so much to Richard and Shryan. Hashtag Team Gav back in business after Christmas. Now. Wow. What do we think to a spring update skip, everybody? So I'm going to tell you what's happened. Fluffy has been fired. Fluffy the bunny, who we had in our spring 2021 updates, moved to LA and has got a career in Hollywood. Now, this has turned Fluffy into a diva. So, Fluffy has actually become a bigger diva than Megan. And that's saying something. So, she wanted me to come back and do, like, the Spring 2023 update. She wanted me to fly her and her entourage of about 30 employees all the way from LA to the UK, and give them all a year's supply of carrots. Not just any carrots, but Dutchy carrots, but really expensive, best of the best carrots. And I said no. I said, I'm not going to give in to your demands, Fluffy. And we had exhaustive negotiations. Richard was negotiating day and night, for about a month. But Fluffy would not budge on her demands. She's such a diva now. So the upshot is, I did my Donald Trump and I said to Fluffy, "You're fired." So Fluffy, unfortunately, will not be back for this season of spring updates. Fluffy is going to carry on with her career in Hollywood, and we wish her all of the best. However, we have got a replacement, or a couple of replacements for Fluffy. So this double act here of the lamb and the dog, and later on in the updates we're going to be naming the lamb. We might name the dog too, but this pair have been on the cabaret circuit for the last 20 odd years. I can tell you, they've just come back from a sellout season in Las Vegas with Barry Manilow. And I think we're very, very lucky to get this duo, So I hope you all love the gift. Thank you so much, Richard, for sorting it out for us after Fluffy became such a diva. And we're going to be, in a couple of weeks' time, how we're going to do it. We're going to be naming the lamb. We might name the little dog there as well. Nice little spaniel. And I don't think we'll name the Waspo, but we'll probably name the lamb, and we'll probably name the dog. Yes, thank you so much, Richard, for our Spring 2023 updates gift. And Fluffy, well, we wish Fluffy all of the best with her career in LA and in Hollywood. And if it doesn't work out, if Fluffy's career goes up in a in a puff of smoke, then she might come back if she starts toning down her demands. I wouldn't rule out never working with Fluffy again. But for now, Fluffy is too much of a diva for me and Rich to cope with. Right, well, that's all that sorted out then. So that's what's been going on behind the scenes over the past few months. I have no idea the nightmare that Fluffy's been given us while being attempted to negotiate with her and her agent. But that's brought you up to date with everything that's gone on there. Thank you so much to Richard for our lovely spring updates gift. And I think with all that said, it's time to date. And we're going to begin our first spring 2023 update. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. So look at December data for this one. We're going to start off with the central England temperature. Now we're going to have a look at England weather precipitation a little bit later on in the video. So this is the CET index from Hadley, going all the way back to 1659. If we come down to the bottom of the chart here, we can see it 2022, just there. And December's central England temperature came out at 3.4 for December 2022. So we're going to be looking at springs following December's with a central in temperature range of 2.8 to 4.1. We're going just from 1950 again with these analogues, this season of updates. That's what we did for our winter updates. It seemed to work out okay, although of course wait and see how the forecast itself comes out. For this season of spring updates, again just from 1950 onwards. So our first spring following December with a CET range of 2.8 to 4.1 is a spring of 1953. So it would be December 1952, but within the CET range. Remember, spring of course is the following year. Right, let's have a look then. Let's have a look. So spring 1953, lots of nice spring there with above average heights, high pressure dominating across much of northern Europe. Pretty dry, and I would have thought relatively pleasant spring there to start us off. How lovely. Our next spring is a spring of 1961. This one doesn't look too bad either, with above average heights generally sitting across western parts of Europe. It looks like that should have a lot of dry, pleasant weather in it as well. Now, this one's not so good. This is the spring of 1965, following a December CET range of 2.8 to 4.1. This is a cold spring, especially so in March. It's a very cold and wintry March. You can see why it has the above average heights over and to the east of the country. It has got the Azores high down there towards the Azores. It also has some blocking around Greenland as well, by the way. Overall, the wind is coming in a lot of the time from the north and from the northeast in this spring. So, especially, as say, in March, it's a cold and wintry spring. Overall, it is a cold spring in 1965. Our next spring is that of 1969. So, this one, again, with above average heights to the north and below average heights down to the south. That looks like a cool and quite wet spring. That's not a very inspiring analogue either. Then we've got 1970, following December CET range of 2.8 to 4.1. This is a cold spring, a cold March as well, actually, with the below average heights to the east and the above average heights out to the west. And the wind with this is coming in from a northerly direction. It has a very cold and wintry spell early in March of 1970 with countrywide blizzards and deep snowfall. Well. I don't know. Then we go on to the spring of 1979. So this is following on from the very cold winter of 78, 79. Of course, when you have a cold winter, the caveat with these analogues, I'll talk a little bit more about it probably at the end, but the caveat with these analogues is that when you have a cold winter, you will tend to have a cold spring afterwards. So the pattern from winter will tend to linger on. Not always, but a lot of the time the pattern from winter will tend to linger on into the spring. And the spring of 1979 is a good example of that, you know, with the pattern going on from the winter into the spring, the blocking around Greenland, back into the Arctic, the trough of low pressure that brings so much snow through the winter of 79. That continues on into the spring. Jet stream is still pushed southwards and whatnot. And so even into May of 1979, there's snow, you know, around the general election of 1979, which elected Margaret Thatcher, on that election day. There was quite a lot of snow across northern parts of the country, and that's in early May. So it's a cold and wintry spring in 1979. And we've got another one here, another pretty cold spring in 1983 as well. Again, with the below average heights across western parts of Europe, the above average heights out into the Atlantic. That's being pushed southwards like that. So it has a very cold spell from March into April around Easter of 1982. It is a classic white Easter that we have in 1983. 1991 shows up next, the spring of 1991. This is a slightly better spring. It's certainly a lot drier with above average heights extending in from the Atlantic into northern parts of Europe. It's a reasonably mild spring as well. It does follow a cold winter too. So it doesn't always work out, but after a cold winter you have a cold spring. 1991 is an example that after a cold winter we actually have a relatively mild and quite pleasant spring. Then we've got the spring of 1993. This is quite a nice spring as well, with high pressure over Scandinavia, bringing in quite a lot of easterly winds. And that follows on from a mild winter. So you can have a colder December, and then the rest of the winter is relatively mild. But December of 1992 was cold, frosty. It was like inversion type cold under high pressure, anticyclonic December in 1992. And then January and February of 93 get much milder. So you can sometimes have a mild winter, even with a coldish December. That's an example of that. And that yields a mild and relatively dry spring as well, a very pleasant spring. Then we have the spring of 2002. This is a warm spring. It has high pressure towards Scandinavia. Low pressure is out to our west, so we bring in the wind from the south a lot of the time during this spring. Again, same idea, has a relatively cold December. That's why the December situation is 2.8 to 4.1. It stays quite cold into the new year, but generally January and then February goes milder, with a very mild and wet February in 2002. So maybe with this, we've got to isolate out the years, that are springs following cold winters and springs that are following milder winters. That might be something we have to do in a future update. Then we have the spring of 2009. This is a pretty warm spring as well, with high pressure to the south and also to our east. Low pressures away to the northwest. That's a very warm spring in 2009, following on from quite a cold winter. Then we have the spring of 2010, which is a cold spring. The pattern from the cold winter of 09-10, that pattern lingers on into the spring with some snow, particularly in March of 2010. Quite a bit of blocking to the north and the east, and winds generally often, a lot of the time anyway, coming in from a northeasterly direction. That's quite a cold spring in 2010. So putting all of that together, this is how all Marches combined are looking following December's with a CET range of 2.8 to 4.1. So lower pressure tends to be to the south and higher pressure in the middle of the Atlantic. So overall probably favouring quite a cold outcome. It's not complete plain sailing though. It's like a classic cold signal. The high pressure needs to be further north for it to be a classic cold signal. But on average, probably a lot of the time, those Marches could be quite cold. Then we have all Aprils combined, looking like this, again with the below average heights to the east. Probably a more unsettled and rather colder signal for those Aprils. And then we have all Mays combined, which looks like that. And again, we get quite a bit of blocking up towards Greenland with below average heights to our south and east, favouring a lot of easterly winds in those Mays, which in May is actually going to be probably a relatively mildish sort of signal, really, a lot of the time. So probably quite warm, but maybe favouring wet conditions, possibly, get your teeth in, Gav, possibly even thunderstorms favoured with those Mays. And then finally, all springs combined look like that. It is an unsettled signal overall for these springs. Not a clear-cut cold signal. There's a little bit of high pressure in the North Atlantic, but it's not a clear-cut blocking type signal for those springs. Nevertheless, I think we do see quite a lot of the springs that are cold, but keep in mind a lot of those are following on from cold winters. So it is going to, it is down to whether you get a cold winter, whether the pattern of that winter carries on into the spring. Right, we'll have a little break there. When we come back, we can look at England and Wales precipitation data. So I shall see you in 2 seconds for that. But for this second, that's all for now. See you in a minute. Okay, hello, we're back. We're ready to resume the first spring 2023 update from GavsWeatherVids. It's good, isn't it? The first part of the video, we're looking at Central England temperature data. We're now moving on to England and Wales precipitation data as well. Thank you, Shona Richard, for our lovely spring updates. Thank you so much to Schreier Brown, for sorting out all of the years for us. Right, so here we go then. We looked at CET first of all for December. We're now looking at England and Wales precipitation. So England and Wales E and EWP for December 2022 came out at 101.6 millimetres, which was virtually bang on average, really. So we're going to be looking at springs following December's with an England Wales precipitation range of 94 to 108 millimetres. Let's do it. Going to start off with spring of 1952. This one, we've got a bit of high pressure to our north and northeast, low pressure to the west and southwest, winds in from the east. It has the late March snowstorm in 1952. Wow, what a snowstorm that was. Then we have a spring of 1957. This is a warm and dry spring with lots of high pressure dominating across much of northern and western Europe as well. So that is a warm and dry spring in 1957. Another warm and dry spring in 1959 with high pressure again in over Scandinavia. Low pressure to the west and south and winds in from the east and from the southeast. That pattern, it's a hot summer in 1959, and the pattern of the summer begins in the spring of 1959. Very extended summer, starts in the spring, goes on even to autumn of 59, of course, but the main part of it is the summer itself, which is a very warm, quite hot summer. This one's 1962. So next up with a December England Wales precipitation range of 94 to 108 millimetres is December 1961. The spring of 1962 is much colder than anything we've seen so far, with high pressure up to Greenland, low pressure across northern and west Europe. Has a very cold March, one of the coldest Marches on record in 1962. Already maybe starting to hint at what's going to happen next year. I've said that the winter situation is possibly a bit of a teaser winter for the daddy of cold winters, which is 1963. And that pattern possibly we see there, you know, the pattern that's going to become very entrenched by the winter of 63. That pattern possibly revealing itself in the spring of 1962, a very cold spring. That one. Moving on, we've got 1965 turning up again. It's bad news seeing that, because it is quite a cold spring again with a cold March, and it has blocking around Greenland, Iceland, winds in from the north and the northeast. But keep in mind that 1960s is an abnormally cold decade, though. Quite a long gap then to 1977. The next spring is 1977. Quite an unsettled spring this, quite a mild spring as well, though not much in the way of cold weather to be concerned about with that one. Then we have the spring of 1978, which is quite a cold and wet spring with below average heights to our south and east and above average heights to our north, winds in from an easterly direction. Again, could that be hinting at the pattern that's going to take us into the following winter? I'll let you decide. And then we've got the spring of 1984. This is quite a warm spring with high pressure to the north and into Scandinavia, low pressure to the south, winds in from the east. Of course, in the spring, easterly winds are going to be relatively warm. In the winter, easterly winds will be cold. And the following winter of 84, 85 does get a lot of easterly winds. So, again, is that hinting at the pattern for the following winter? Once more, I'll let you decide. But it's actually a relatively dry and warm spring, I think, in 1984. 1991 is back again as well. So this spring is mild and dry with lots of high pressure in across the north and the west of Europe. A nice spring, that one. We've got a spring of 1998 showing up next. So this is a colder spring, below average heights to the east and above average heights out to the west. So it has quite a lot of northerly winds. The thing with this spring is that a super El Nino is very rapidly flipping into a developing La Nina. So it's quite an unusual spring, that one. The La Nina probably doesn't have much effect, but it is affected, I think, by the El Nino that's kind of backing off. And we know with El Nino that it really is late on, like late winter into spring, where you can get colder weather. And that is a good example, I think, in 97, 98. However, it does have a very warm May, though, in 1998. So it has a cold April, in particular, with flooding rains and snow. And then in May, we have a very warm and dry May, actually. And May probably the best month of the whole summer of 1998, to be honest. We have 1999 showing up next. It's still quite an unsettled spring. And you look at the analogue and think it's probably quite a cold spring. It's not really. It's relatively warm spring. It does have a cold snap in April, but overall, relatively warm spring in 1999, a little bit on the unsettled side. Spring 2004 is another pretty warm spring with high pressure to the northeast, low pressure to the south, winds in from the east a lot of the time. Remember, spring is the most easterly season and May is the most easterly month of all of the months. So that's very classic of what we tend to see in the spring. Then we have the spring of 2008. This is kind of similar to 1998 in some ways. It has blocking around Greenland, low pressure into the east of the country, winds very often in from the east and the northeast. There's a prolonged cold spell from late March into the middle of April, quite a bit of snow in with that as well. However, it does have another very warm May, and May 2008 is a very warm and dry month, and again, probably the best month of the extended summer, because overall the summer of 2008 is a pretty bad one. And then finally, we have 2022. So spring 2022 followed December 2021 with an England wet precipitation range of 94 to 108 millimetres, and last spring was a very dry and warm spring, of course, with high pressure dominating over and to the east of the country. Again, possibly that's the pattern of the winter carrying over, which was a mild and dry winter. Let's just put all of that together then. So this is how all Marches combined are looking following December. England wet precipitation range is 94 to 108 millimetres. Overall has a blocking signal to the north, but probably not a clear-cut cold signal with low pressure in off the Atlantic. So rather unsettled signal for those Marches. For the north, it could be quite a cold signal, a little bit less so than the south. All Aprils combined looks like that. Again, just looks like rather an unsettled signal ring with below average heights around the west of Europe. Could be cold with some of those Aprils, but not all of them by any means. And then all Mays looks like that. Much more anticyclonic signal for the Mays with high pressure just to our west, lower pressure to the south and east across Europe. Probably favouring a relatively dry signal for these Mays, and there would be a range of, in terms of temperature, some of them could be quite cold with winds in from the north, but quite a few of them, 98, 2008, could have a lot of warm weather. The main thing I think for the Mays is that the shift takes place towards a much more anticyclonic type signal. And then finally, all springs combined, following December, England and Wales, precipitation range of 94 to 108 millimetres, looks like that. And tend to have high pressure to the north of the UK, low pressure to the south, so it suggests a lot of easterly winds. Of course, spring is a transitional season, so easterly winds in March could be quite cold, easterly winds in May could be relatively warm, but possibly a little bit on the wet and thundery side. And we're done for our first spring 2023 update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Quite good, wasn't it? Quite interesting. Thank you so much. Right then, so we're off and running with our spring 2023 updates. We're going to have another one for you next week. We'll be doing spring updates pretty much every week from now to the end of February, when we will be, of course, releasing the GavsWeatherVids Spring 2023 forecast, and that'll be coming up, as I say, at the end of February. Thank you so much to Richard and to our duo for the gift, and thank you so much to Shryan as well. Thank you so much to hashtag Team Gav. We're going to be back later on with your 10 to 14 Gav. That's going to include all of the regular features, so come back to that a little bit later on for the first Spring 2023 update. That's all for now, and thanks so much for watching.